Here with us now is Republican Congressman from Florida, Randy Fine, who is also in the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. Congressman Fine, welcome back.
Good morning.
President Trump says the U.S. could eventually send ground troops into Iran to secure the nuclear facilities. We just heard from Trevor a moment ago. But he also says the military is decimating targets from the air and a ground mission will only come, quote, later on. If Trump were to send U.S. troops into Iran, would you support that move specifically?
Well, I think the president's being smart here. He's not telegraphing his plays. He's not going to tell the Iranian government what they will and wouldn't do. When you do that, you give them the ability to defend from that. I support what the president's done. This needed to be done. We cannot have Iran have a nuclear weapon. We cannot have Iran have ballistic missiles that can reach the United States with that nuclear weapon. And the fact of the matter remains, we know that Iran has enriched uranium in its country that could be used to build, they claimed, 11 nuclear weapons that they wish to deploy on the United States. So I'll support the president in whatever he needs to do to make sure we keep Americans safe.
This operation is now in its second week, day 8 today. What military objectives do you still want to see accomplished, Congressman?
Well, I think they're the same objectives we've had before. As long as Iran is firing missiles at the Middle East, is running drones into civilian targets, it means there are military capabilities that need to be degraded. The president has said he wants to get rid of the missile shield. He wants to eliminate their ability to build intercontinental ballistic missiles, and he wants to eliminate their ability to create nuclear weapons. That mission's obviously not finished yet, and I'll support him until it's done.
How long do you think it will take to accomplish this mission?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I'm not a military expert, and I don't have a lot of the information that the president does. I think one of the troubling things is people will make all of these kinds of statements when they don't truly know what's going on. I certainly have more information than some people as a member of Congress, but I don't have the same information that the president and the Secretary of War and others do. I think they've done everything right so far because, again, a country that has screamed for 47 years, death to America, we need to believe when they say they're building nuclear weapons that they want to attack us with. I don't need to see us be hit by a nuclear weapon before I think we need to do something about it. President Trump agrees with me.
I think most Americans agree with you there. You told us when this operation began, we had you on last week, that you support the president's authority to strike Iran. But what role do you feel Congress has in oversight as we move forward and this war escalates?
Well, I did vote against the War Powers Act this week. The president sent his team. We had a classified briefing. I believe it was on Tuesday evening. There will be more of them. Every question that I have asked, I have gotten an answer to. I can't tell you what those answers are, but I am very satisfied with the information. They don't seem to be holding things back, and they seem to be very transparent with what's going on. If I see something that concerns me, I'll speak up. But every question I've had, they have answered, and I appreciate it very much.
What do you see happening next as this war escalates, Congressman?
Well, I think we're going to continue to degrade their military capability. As one of your reporters said, the number of missiles, the number of drones they've fired tends to go down every day, which shows, I don't think that's because they want to reduce their firepower. I think it's because their firepower is being reduced. I want those to be attacked. And what I really would like to see is the Iranian people get to a place where they can rise up and take over their own country so that we don't have Muslim religious leaders who seek to kill us all in charge, but the Iranian people, that 40,000 of whom died just a few weeks ago trying to create a free and fair Iran. I want an Iran that screams friend to America, not death to America.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.